Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're completely deconstructing a stunning, super fresh spring makeup look created by the incredible Izzy Shea. We're going to break down exactly how she engineers this glowy aesthetic from the ground up. And honestly, the absolute star of the show, the whole inspiration for this routine is this gorgeous Prada palette. It is literally packed with soft pinks, warm browns, and, as you'll see in a minute, a truly brilliant iridescent green shimmer that completely changes the game.
Just listen to her reaction. She said, I swatched it and I was like, no, I'm saving it to use on a YouTube video, right? That quote just perfectly captures that feeling of finding a product so good you literally have to hold off on using it. That level of absolute excitement is going to anchor our whole procedural breakdown today. We're not just throwing on makeup here. We're figuring out how to replicate a very specific, glowing vibe born out of pure inspiration.
So here's our blueprint for today. We've got 5 steps. 1. Prepping for the glow. 2. Blown out spring eyes. 3. Shaping and setting brows. 4. Building a flawless base. And 5. Lips and final touches. Let's get into it.
Kicking things off with Section 1, Prepping for the Glow, Skincare as the Foundation.
Right out of the gate, there is a massive emphasis on hydration. She starts off with the LHO Glow Recipe toning pads and then follows up with something she absolutely swears by, the Rehab Whipped Cream Moisturizer. It's Korean skincare, which, usually explains that incredibly deeply hydrated glass skin finish. Next up, keeping with the Prada theme, she swipes on a Prada lip balm. But here's a super brilliant, functional little hack for you. She goes in with a Wonderskin lip tint in the shade Whimsical. Now, this isn't the final lip look at all, it's just a temporary stain to give her lips some color so she doesn't look totally washed out while working on her eyes. Honestly, it's such a smart trick for visualizing the final balance of your face as you go.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, Blown Out Spring Eyes, layering the Prada palette.
I love how she treats the eye almost like a micro-narrative, right? Starting with really broad strokes and then dialing into those ultra-fine details. So she begins by creating this beautifully blown-out shape, taking the middle shade from the palette all the way across her lid and dragging it almost to the very tail end of her eyebrow. Then, to really elongate the eye, she takes a darker pink but keeps it strictly localized to the outer edge. But step 3 is where the absolute magic happens. Remember that iridescent gold-green shimmer we talked about? Well, she ditches the brushes entirely and uses her finger to press that show-stopping shade directly into the inner corner. And honestly, using your finger is a fantastic, tried-and-true way to get maximum pigment payoff from any shimmer shadow.
Now, notice how she adds all this beautiful definition without any of the harshness of a liquid liner. She explicitly avoids creating a full wing. Instead, she just uses a brown shadow to softly deepen the lash line and that outer edge. And she also makes sure to deepen the inner corners too. It's a technique that frames the eye perfectly, but keeps that really soft, fresh spring aesthetic totally intact.
To complement that soft shadow-based liner, she moves on to lashes. She grabs the Kiko Milano Laminated Lash Effect Mascara specifically because it gives this gorgeous wispy look. Then, rather than slapping on a heavy, full strip lash that might totally overpower the eye, she uses Suki lash clusters. And her application is so precise here. She literally clamps just one single cluster onto the outer corner of each eye. It just perfectly enhances that elongated shape she built with the pink shadow.
Okay, so with the eyes mostly done, we're seamlessly transitioning up to frame the face. So, what do we want to do with the brows? That brings us to Section 3, Shaping and Setting Brows, Elongation and Control.
Her brow routine is a really solid 3-step process. First, she keeps that whole theme of elongation going by stretching out the brow shape using a flower nose eyebrow pencil. Second, she switches products completely, grabbing an Anastasia Beverly Hills pencil to softly fill in just the very front. And finally, she locks the whole thing down with NYX brow glue and gel. What's actually really smart here is she mentions she's reserving the right to touch them up later once the base makeup is done. It's a very dynamic, adaptable way to work.
All right, Section 4, Building a Flawless Base, Hydration and Coverage.
So now she's purposefully layering her products to really lock in that moisture. First things first, she removes that temporary lip stain from earlier. Then, as a primer, she goes in with Kiko Prepping Milk. Even though she already did her whole skincare routine, she adds this as an extra layer just for the skin's benefit. Next, she applies her absolute go-to Kylie Skin Tint. But here's a super interesting detail. She blends it in with a dry flower nose sponge. Not damp, dry.
Finally, she targets some specific areas of scarring, mostly right around her nose, with a Huda Beauty concealer.
And I absolutely love this next part. She says, I know you should use your ring finger, but if I'm being real, I do not care. I much prefer to use concealer to blend under my eyes because I think it just sinks in a lot nicer. This quote just perfectly captures her relatable, highly practical approach. I mean, we've all heard the golden rule that you literally must use your delicate ring finger for the under eye area, right? But she just flat out says she doesn't care about the rules. She uses whatever finger she feels like to tap in that concealer simply because it sinks in better for her than a brush does. It's just a great reminder that the best makeup technique is always the one that actually works for your specific skin.
To add dimension back into the face, she basically puts on a masterclass in liquid and cream layering. She sculpts her fair skin using Rare Beauty liquid contour in the shade Gentle. Then she applies a Kiko Hug Contour blusher, and taking a fluffy brush, she blends it directly up and into her eyeshadow. It creates this totally seamless gradient of color. And here is another huge pro tip. She creatively uses Giorgio Armani liquid sheer on the back of her hand, applying it as this gorgeous underlayer highlight before she finishes her under-eye concealer. Then, to warm it all up, she sweeps Rare Beauty bronzer in Summer Feels across her cheeks and forehead. Finally, she applies a really unique skin tone blusher. She specifically points out it's not peach and it's not pink, and she blends it out with the exact same sponge she used for her foundation, just to marry all those products together.
Now, we've all had those totally frustrating moments where we run out of our favorite product mid-routine, right? Well, she realized she was out of her go-to hourglass powder. But instead of panicking, she just improvises this brilliant little setting powder concoction. She basically mixes together whatever she has on hand: Huda Beauty, Charlotte Tilbury Flawless Finish, HMBB, and Kylie powders. It's a super resourceful mix that perfectly sets that deeply hydrated, multi-layered base we were just talking about.
Moving into the final stretch with Section 5, Lips and Final Touches. Tying it all together.
Okay, so just like the dace and the eyes, the lips are a very strategic layering process. It takes 4 precise steps. She builds the foundation with a NYX Professional Lip Stain in the shade After Hours. Next, she layers Kylie Cosmetics and comes naturally right over top of that. For the core pop of color, she dabs on Giorgio Armani lipstick, shade 107. And then finally, to build some dimension and soften the whole effect, she uses just a touch of Huda Beauty right in the dead center to lighten it up. To finalize this stunning overall aesthetic, she runs through a really quick checklist of enhancements. First, she curls her natural lashes to blend them in with those clusters. Then, she applies Wonder Skin in the shade Kalamata, specifically focusing on the outer third of the lower lash line and the inner corner. She sets the face with MCO Beauty setting powder. For the bottom lashes, she opts for a much softer Flower Nose Brown mascara. Then she pops a beautiful hourglass highlight and a dark brown shadow right under the eye to give it a tiny bit more smokiness. And lastly, she does one final delicate sweep of pink shadow to totally tie the eye look together.
So, the moment of truth. How did it all actually turn out? In her final review, she offers a pretty honest critique of her own work. While she loves the overall vibe, she felt those single cluster lashes ended up being just a little bit too heavy for the fresh, airy look she was going for. But the absolute triumph of this entire routine? The skin. Thanks to that intense, multi-layered skin prep, the Korean moisturizer, the Kiko milk, and all that strategic blending, she declares her complexion looks absolutely delicious.
Ultimately, by deconstructing her routine today, we see that a flawless, fresh makeup look isn't magic. It's a highly careful, strategic process of layering. It's all about building that hydration, improvising a concoction when you need to, and using the right tools, even if that tool happens to be your own finger. So, I want to leave you with this. Which of these exact layering techniques are you going to adopt to engineer your own flawless, glowing spring aesthetic? Will you try the dry sponge trick? Maybe that wild multi-powder concoction? Start experimenting with this stuff today and see what works for you.